And we're back. Oh my gosh. We are in the home stretch now and getting to some, I mean, we've had the good stuff all day. Now we've got some really good stuff because I'm here with Interlude Press's art director, RJ Shepard, otherwise known as Buckeye Girl to those of you on Tumblr, or Buckeye
Hello.
Girl Designs also, where
Yes.
a new blog where you're talking a bit. Actually, you're doing what I'm hoping we'll get a chance to do in the next hour or so here, which is talk about what goes into the design of the interlude book covers,
Yes.
a little bit of the backstory of it, and also some of them have a little extra meaning to them. We've got some new covers to unveil today, as well as the back covers. Some of them are stunning. They're beautiful books. So why don't we well, wait, one thing to say right ahead of
Hmm?
time, that there is a raffle, first of all, that just wrapped up that we'll announce at the end for your choice of book covers as mini posters. For example, today's title that just went for sale, Bleeding Heart, The Man with the Hot Abs. You can have this, or you could have Platonic, or you could have one that you haven't seen yet, but you will by the end of this session. It'll be your choice, whoever wins that raffle copter. Also, if you haven't entered for our grand prize for a year's worth of free DRM-free multi-format ebooks, you have 2 hours, a little under 2 hours to enter. So go to our Rafflecopter site. You can get to it via our own website, interludepress.com. Go to the launch party page, which is interludepress.com/launch_party. Yes, launch party. And you'll find
Lunch
it in there.
party.
Party. And you'll find the link in there. Go ahead, enter. All it takes is following us on Tumblr, on Twitter, retweeting something, tweeting something you make up. It doesn't matter so long as you talk a little bit about Interlude in the process. And let's see what else we got. We've got Facebook and Pinterest. That may be it, I think. Perhaps Google Plus on there. But anyway, lots of options. If you haven't done so already, each counts as another entry. You could get over $200 worth of really beautiful ebooks that transition. They grow with you, however Lex describes it. He does it better than I do. But basically, if you change e-readers, it doesn't matter because you're going to have every format available to you, and they're all going to look like those beautiful books. So I feel a little bit like I'm on Home Shopping Network right now, so I'm going to stop, and we're going to talk about cover art. And I'm pretty much going to turn it over to you, Becky, because we're going to go chronologically through book
Yeah,
covers.
that's right.
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, let's see. This is the show and tell version of the interlude launch party, and so let me take a minute here and share my screen um, with us, so we can kind of go through. This is, I'm going to show you some of the background process between what we did for Bleeding Heart. And early in the discussion, we had some ideas for wanting to do something that was very strong and visual, visual and a little gothic, but not something that would go all the way into something that would be very kind of cheesy. And so we started talking about some things, and the process can feature a lot of
That's my
elements.
artwork right there.
We take our ideas where we can get them. We had thought about this idea of having a tattoo. We didn't necessarily. We tried some things with doing like necks, showing necks and things like that would be featuring. I didn't want to show somebody with fangs because that was too literal. And so we had talked about doing this tattoo, and Girly sent me this and said, "How about this?" And we said, "Why, yes, that's perfect." So
It is.
we started playing around with this idea and looking for stock photography that would have some body types and positions that we could work with. So with some of the elements we were looking for, I already had a very keen idea of what I wanted to do with the type, so that kind of settled it in my head at an early stage. But trying to find the right body and the right background that would work was a little bit more challenging. And we kind of tried a couple things, and here's my sample, my sample tattoo, and every cover I showed was like, no, that's just a placeholder, but that we'll find a good art for that later. Let's work on the body in the background. And so, no, this isn't quite right. And then we happened across this young man and said, why, yes, we have our abs. I mean, we have our cover model.
I love my job. I mean, I love that I have meetings to discuss abs.
Yes.
It's a good job.
So now we started putting the elements together, and trying to find, the next step was trying to find a good representation of this logo, this tattoo. Now, the original inspiration for that was something that Melissa had come up with herself when she had originally done her fic version, and this was a logo for the blood club that that one of the protagonists works at. And so it's like, okay, so we want to take something of this and then stylize it so it can look like a tattoo. Well, if you go online and look, then just do a Google search for vampire tattoo, there's some pretty awesome and scary things out there. So I called upon an artist friend of mine, whose name is Abby, and I said, just throw some stuff together for me because this is not working. I can't see it. And so she pulled together a few things, and I said, ooh, I think we're getting closer. And then my 12-year-old daughter came down and she said, we need to do the one with the pointy teeth, Mom. And so we had our tattoo.
So I didn't know the part about the 12-year-old.
Yes, she is my office assistant and consultant, and she gets paid in ice cream.
Nice.
So it works out pretty well. Now the next thing is that we need to have a background that depicts what we were hoping to get was an alleyway that would be the this kind of dark Gothic place where the blood club, something that's a little bit on a little bit more seedy side of town, and kind of give that kind of a sensibility to what's going on in the background. Right. And so I found this lovely alleyway, again in stock photography, and the bright yellow juxtaposed with our black and white cover model. He only came in black and white, so that limited our options a little bit. The bright yellow was a little too bright for the subject matter, so we started playing with some things, converting it to black and white, and then playing with different filters until we came on with the blue that we eventually came up with. And then, because if you take a look at this, the way the buildings kind of angle in, they're a little tipsy, and that wasn't quite what I wanted to go for. I pulled out my Photoshop architecture degree and straightened things up a little bit. The beauty of this is that the front cover for this gets to see this side of the buildings, and the back cover that is blocked by our model on the front cover, or the cover model blocks the other building, but that is the prime place where we have for our back cover. So we kind of got a 2-for-1 deal for this artwork, which I love it. I love it when I get bonus stuff like that. So
the drop in the title, the meaning of that is that it's also the drop from the logo for the Blood Club.
Yes.
In the story.
Yes.
And for those who aren't familiar with Bleeding Heart, obviously it's a vampire story, but it's a vampire story with more than one twist, with a couple of twists. It's got political undertones. It's sort of a political suspense, erotic, romantic vampire story. Am I missing anything? I don't think so. It's a multi-dimensional story. It's not your standard vampire fic. And the Blood Club is a central location. It's very central to the story and future stories for Bleeding Heart. So check it out. That's by Melissa Graves, known as Miss Basie in Tumblrdom.
All right. So Let's see. Are we ready for our next?
Yes, let's do. Let's move on to Platonic. This was a really interesting cover to work on because I remember the first meeting. In fact, I'm going to drop in here, just talk a little bit about the process we do, because we actually had a couple questions about this earlier. What process we go through to come, to the covers, and do we work with the writers at all? And yes, we do. We have a meeting right up front. Well, up front after they get their manuscript in. Or close to it. We're doing a little earlier than we used to now to try and have a lot more lead time on cover art. But we'll have a brainstorming session. Becky, myself, and Lex and Annie with the author to see, first of all, do they have any particular ideas that they're interested in? Is there anything they ever really had in mind for it? Sometimes they've got very detailed ideas. Sometimes there's nothing there at all. In the case of Platonic, all of us, the only thing we could think of was a bed. And
That's right.
Becky, you can take over from there.
Well, what we said was that there are certain images, considering the genre that we're working in, that immediately come to mind. And a rumpled bed was one of those images, and we had to find just the right story to use that image in, because you can't overdo that. And then Platonic came up, and we go, that's it. That's the one that has the bed, because those of you that are familiar with the fics, you know that there is a lot of amazing sex in the story, but the sex is not the central element of the story. There's so much that is built into and woven around with this that we needed to do something that was that alluded to it, that was very classy, that honored it. And so the next question was to sit down and figure out, okay, how do we represent this appropriately? And so, okay, so if we're leaping off on the element of the bed, a couple other things that kind of came into play as we were thinking about this was the element of time. I don't know if you remember that BZ's tagline for her teaser is "1 decade can change everything."
Actually, this one is Kate Paddington, but yes, 1 decade. And
oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
that's
sorry.
okay. We just did
Donna.
basic, but Kate's story takes place over the course of a decade. A couple that's together in high school breaks up, goes their separate ways, and eventually comes back together, but after a interesting journey for one of them.
Right. And so, so we kind of worked on that a little bit. So there's this element of time. How do you represent time, and how do you represent this concept of relationship and physicality and such, all in this thing? So we start from a very simple thing. Okay, well, bedroom. All right, let's kind of see where that takes us from there. All right, so stock photography. Yeah, beds, rumpled is just a room going to do it. Yeah, that's not. That just wasn't doing. It's too cutesy, too simple. Let's try things that are a little bit more graphically oriented, and again, pleasing arrangements, but nothing that really stood out as conveying.
It didn't tell a story.
That's right. It was a picture of a bed, and nicely arranged type, but it's a picture of the bed. Okay, so then we started talking about, okay, well, how do we incorporate this idea of time into it? And well, some of the obvious things. Well, what if we took a clock? And well, maybe a Roman clock, Roman numeral clock would be something that would indicate longer stretches of time, i.e., a decade. But and still be kind of a thing. And well, let's try superimposing it. And it wasn't. My apologies. There we go. It wasn't something that was really kind of catching, even as many times as we tried to do it, and or different ways that we played with it. And so anyway, one thing that struck me was that this idea that the visual, I had seen a visual of a piece of plate glass that had been held up and dropped onto the ground and broken to these shards. And I said, I had been talking to Lex and Gurley about this, and said, well, what about something like that to kind of superimpose over this idea of the bed? And they said, oh, that's interesting. and so we played with that some more. And as you can see here, we've got the this kind of tone-on-tone blue, these cool colors, the slashes of sections that are kind of irregular, that represent the way that these men have tried to you know, the different relationships that they go, you know, their time together, then they split apart, and the relationships that they go through, the journey that they kind of find back to each other. It's not a natural fit. They don't fit right back again as puzzle pieces. It's a little discordant, a little bit rough in a lot of ways. And the idea of having this repetition of the different strips of color, the different strips of this rumpled, very artistically rumpled bed, give this sense of a passage of time. And if you ever want to have a tremendously interesting conversation, sit down with Kate and ask her about the concept of her concept, and mixed with philosophy and science, her concept of the passage of time, and how the decade plays into this more strongly than just saying a certain moment changes everything. No, it's the decade, how all that fits together. And so this longer view really kind of synthesized what we wanted to do.
When is a bed not a bed?
When is a bed not a bed? Exactly. So from this cover, you know, when you're doing a book cover, you always have to kind of think, okay, what's going to happen with the back cover that will coordinate with it? And this was a relatively straightforward thing. We found another stock photo that could be in the same bedroom, and gave us the opportunity to kind of, you know, have a nice place to put the text and still keep with the same kind of colors and theme that we were striking out with in the front cover.
We've got a couple quick questions since we're kind of in a natural pause between covers. I'm going to say just Def asks, are there any people who work on covers coming from an arts education background? I think that's safe to say.
Yes.
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 Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And you're going to see work with illustrators, outside illustrators that we've contracted with, coming up very soon in this. Also, one other quick one here from Ariel, who just asked us questions on another panel too. So thank you, Ariel. Did you read the stories before coming up with the covers? And oh, how do you pick a font?
Oh, I love typography, and so fonts are, that's always a very fun part. It can be a very frustrating part, but also a very fun part. Do I read these stories? Yes, I do, as much as I can. In the case of these first few titles that had originally started as fan fictions, I was a fangirl first and read them when they came out, and then had the opportunity to read them again. Sometimes, depending on the process, where they are in the manuscript process, I get to see a version of the new story, and which is very important because details change. I had seen in one of your other panels about, you know, especially things where you're representing the characters in the story on the cover, you know, or places and things like that, and how do you incorporate those kind of details in a way. So you do need to be familiar with the work that you're illustrating.
I think we'll be seeing that in a couple of them coming in. We've got a couple more questions. The people who just sent them in, we'll get to them. Let's do another cover or two first, and then we'll get back to the questions.
All right. Our next cover is
lovely.
Is lovely. Is for our story Designs on You. Now, talking about coming from a
are we skipping over Forever Man?
Yes. I am sorry. You're right. Let me pull that up. My apologies.
Slip. If we're going chronological, let's go Forever Man.
Oh, I got my order mixed up. My apologies. Let's try this. All right. Now, those of you that happen to follow my Buckeye Girl Designs blog had seen a very detailed analysis of how we did the front cover, including the discussion of, is this the right butt?
Yes. This should be the front cover. This should be the back cover.
Yes. And so this, what I'm going to show you now is a little bit of this, of how we came up with this milagro. The concept of the milagro, the symbolism of the milagro, is something that's very, very strong and continues through the story. Holds a lot of symbolism in the story. And so we wanted to do something that would feature it in some way. And so, and also kind of be a nod to the spirit of Santa Fe as a very artsy, spiritual kind of town. And so,
well, spirituality is a theme in the story
yeah.
as well. So all of this tied together, and it's used in a couple different ways with the book too.
Yes. So basically, what I had done with this, what I had come up with, I had found this type for the front cover that was kind of distressed and broken, and kind of had a feel of being painted, of a rough painting over a rough surface. And so I wanted some art for the milagro that would complement that. And the idea that I came up with was a scratchboard technique. Now, scratchboard is a thin layer of clay that is on a piece of paper, and then it's covered over with ink. And the way you get your art is to scratch away the black so that the white is revealed underneath it. So after doing some pencil sketches, I traced it onto this, I traced it with my X-Acto knife onto this thing and started scratching away the white areas to reveal the design.
During that conference call, because we could hear, and let's see if I can replicate it, all the way through the conference call, and we finally said, Becky, what are you doing?
Creating art.
Yeah, we're working on the cover for Forever Man. It's okay.
Yeah. So getting that scanned in, getting it into Photoshop, you have the opportunity to kind of play with some different options, and I found the piece that worked well with the title. Now, again, looking at back cover art, what is something that would complement the front cover in a way? And this, as nice as this was, it just wasn't quite there. It wasn't quite artsy enough, and so I kept having this idea for, well, having something painted on a wall. And so, again, bringing it into Photoshop, sectioning, selecting different sections, doing overlays of color, trying different textures behind, seeing what would work and what felt good, and playing with colors. The color of turquoise blue is something that is that you see a lot of in southwestern kinds of arts and such. What is it? I think that color of blue is meant to. A lot of people will paint their doors that color.
Yes.
As a keeping away evil spirits or evil something. Anyway, as a.
Oh, but there is a point to it. But yes, lots of blue doors in Santa Fe.
So trying these different things, and they weren't quite what I was looking for until I came up with a little more scratched metal surface and the color. And then something. This is where you take the fine art and have to consider the practical art version, and putting in shadows so that you have a place to lay your text, so that you can read the summary of your book, and how that plays with the art. So that is how we came to our milagro for our back cover for Forever Man.
Forever Man. Gorgeous milagro. I'm going to pop in a question here just to keep up, because I've seen a couple come in before we shift over to pivot and slip. Let's see. How about, these covers are super, super gorgeous. I agree. This is from Raven. How much time on average does it take to make a cover, and what are the techniques you use if you ever get stuck on ideas for a cover?
Let's see. How many hours does it take? A lot of that will depend on whether I am creating the art originally myself, such as what we did for Forever Man. For these first few covers, I did the artwork myself. And especially if it's something that's Photoshop intensive, that can run many, many, many hours. But it's one of these things. I'm fortunate to be doing something that I love, and so I can come home and go, yay, I'm going to get energized and we're going to do this thing because it's hella fun. So let's see, what was the second part of that question? Where do we get ideas?
What techniques would you use if you get stuck?
What techniques do we use if I get stuck? Being able to bounce ideas off of friends, other artists, the IP, the Interlude Press team are wonderful ways to spark ideas. And there have been many
Especially
times.
because, you know, we're so skilled in lollipop trees and stick figures.
Exactly. Find your sources anywhere. I will sit and go through, you know, when we start a cover, go through Google image search for anything related to the name of the title, the subject of the book, you know, things like that, and see if that sparks anything. There have been some cases that I have had a very strong idea of this is what we need to do, and then come back to Girly and Annie and Lex and go, what do you think of this? And they go, oh boy, that's not reading the same way for me. And so being in commercial design, you have to have a little bit of a thick skin so you can go, okay, we need to back up and we need to look at this again. And invariably, we always come back with something even better. Yes. And so that's being able to bounce ideas off of friends, being able to, if I have a couple of artist friends who I pull in every now and again and say, you know, what do you think about this? And they give me feedback, and usually through a lot of collaboration and such, we come to these gorgeous options.
The next one that we have was our first cover where we reached out to another artist, to someone on the outside to contribute, and we ended up with a stunner.
Yes. This was a situation where, for Pivot and Slip, the subject matter being of a boxer, and kind of a boxer who's very much down on his luck isn't quite the right word, but definitely in a state where he's having to take a serious look at what he's doing with his life, and you know, and his career has put him in a kind of life-threatening situation, and he had to make some really hard choices. And again, first source, go to stock photos, go to internet searches, see what kinds of things are out there. And if you put in do a quick Google search for the words sad boxer, most of the pictures you pull up are going to be very, very sad puppies, boxer dogs. And boy, okay, that would not help us. And so, you know, okay, we have to go outside of our standard methods to do this. Fortunately, we were able to tap the talents of the tremendously skilled pencil pushing enthusiast for this work. I had sent her an email and said, you know, I'm a big admirer of your work, and we have this idea, you know, would you be interested in kind of playing with us on this? And she said, absolutely. And so I sent her a big long screed of reference art, and okay, we're kind of looking at this, and we'd like a picture of a boxer who's sitting on a bench, kind of this shot of him he's been in a hard fight, and he's kind of this kind of a little bit of melancholy. He's evaluating what his next move is. And she sent us 3 sketches of art. Now, typically when an artist will send me things, I will take their sample art, put it in a mock-up cover, and then from there we start to refine it and show and choose what works best. All right, so here we go on the screen share. This is the first option that she sent us, and here you can see me. I'm playing with different type things and such. I told her just to send me some black and white art, and we could kind of go from there. The boxer slouched on the bench, and his gloves here beside him, playing with some different text and some different positions. Does it work better if the image is flopped, etc.? Here's another piece of original art. Although this one didn't quite have enough room for a title treatment kind of thing, and so I resize it and fill in with grayscale so we can kind of see, you know, okay, if this shadow extends beyond there, how will we work with type in this situation, or something like this. Okay, so we can kind of see the framework that we're, you know, how big can we get the title, etc. So we can see how to work. So, and here was another original sketch that she sent to us, and this sparked some more different cover treatments with it. And we started kind of getting to the point, okay, this stance, this position, this treatment for the type, that's the direction we want to go. Then it was a matter of refining it. Now, choosing type. I am a good one for scouring all of the font sites there are out there. There are Font Squirrel and DaFont and 1000 fonts and such. You do need to be a little careful to see what just getting free fonts off the internet is a fantastic thing, but for something like a publication, you have to consider usage licenses. And so, in some cases, you need to buy fonts in order to do that. So we do a lot of trials to see what we really want, and then we go out and get what works best. So anyway, this was the kind of thing we had been playing with this idea where we would have a screen of color over top of our boxer, and when CB, Pencil Pushing Enthusiast, came back with her final, we had asked her to not only give us this. She's working in black and white. We put a little bit of a warm tone to it, which gave it a little bit of a vignette or a vintage feel to it. And the text in the title echoes old boxing posters, and so has that. It's a little bit crisper than what we had started out with the handwriting version.
So, for example, if you wanted it on your wall,
go quickly and sign up if you haven't already. So, and the other thing we did, whereas this had been an entirely, the sketches were originally all one color, I had asked her if she could please put some color in the gloves, traditional red boxing gloves. And so now not only do we have our visual starts here in the corner with our boxer, travels over here to the red behind the title, and then drops back down to these worn out boxing gloves that echo the red in it. And so this is one of those kind of perfect storm of things that just all came together so beautifully. And working with CB was tremendous because she was so full of fantastic ideas, not only tremendously skilled, but also full of all these ideas that just really, the back and forth made us a very, very beautiful cover.
Yeah, and it went pretty seamlessly from cover art brainstorming meeting to art.
Mm-hmm.
We knew the general direction we wanted to go in, and she picked up on that, as did you, obviously, and turned out a cover that it's a beautiful thing. So let's do another question, super fast between them. Okay, Jonna asks, I missed the first 10 minutes of the panel. You can go to YouTube and catch everything you missed, just to plug. And hopefully I didn't miss this, but have you had to convince any author about your idea for a cover? Or did they put a lot of their own ideas in the design for the covers? I think they're all gorgeous, by the way. We're going to hold that thought for just a little bit because we may have an example that we can discuss. Yes. Let's continue.
Working with the author, sometimes authors will come in with some very distinct ideas. Sometimes they have little bits and pieces that we pull from things. Sometimes they go, I'm not a visual person. I can't. It just I don't have any ideas. So we go, okay, well, let's run with it. The adventures of book design and publishing. So for our next cover, let me introduce you. Yes, Designs on You. Now this one is this is a story that I have a particular tie into because the original fic had developed from sitting and chatting with our beloved Carrie Pack, also known as X. She has graphic design background. I am a graphic design background, and we were commiserating on clients and things. And this little fic kind of grew out of the original fic. Kind of grew out of those discussions. So Yeah, the protagonist is a graphic designer. Then I have to go in and go, okay, how am I going to represent that in a way that is going to make sense to a general audience? Because there's lots of tools and things that would be specific to my trade, but wouldn't necessarily track. So we finally had settled on the idea that we were going to go with photography, because that is an element of what he does, the protagonist does in the book. So got some basic stock art, and then the idea was that we would have some photos or some sketches that would kind of tie in the model element of the story. And so working with this artwork, we had to do some Photoshop kind of layers where I laid over the sketches on top and then had to bring the lens in front, and then scaled it back so that it looked like it was translucent, and then made another copy of that layer and cut out the lens part here, so that it looked like the lens was actually laying over top of the artwork there.
And the
And
artwork, of course, not representing actual photographs, but more like storyboard images.
yeah, exactly, like storyboard. A lot of times when I'm doing my layouts, I will do sketches mocking up things before I start moving things around on paper, so that way I know how to frame things. And I envision the designer, art director, and the story being able to, taking those kind of things as he was directing the photo shoots. So anyway, we get our cover, and then we start adding in things like putting in shadows again, taking out bright spots that would interfere with where the type is going to go, and kind of blending things in so it looks more natural until we get the type in there. Again, using type, I wanted something that would evoke the fashion industry, so starting to look on a lot of fashion magazines and things like that, seeing what kind of type styles they use. This idea was actually pulled from the Fashion Night Out artwork that had popped up the last couple of years that I enjoyed and be inspired by. And so again, looking again to the back cover, what do we do to make it blend in, to make things correspond, is taking another piece of this original artwork, this original picture, and then utilizing that on the back cover. So we stayed with the same theme.
A very different look from the other covers. We had kind of gone dark, 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 and then suddenly, boom, a pop of fluorescent green, almost, of bright color in there. Really kind of jolted things into another gear, which I think was good and fit that title really well.
Mm-hmm.
Our next one is a cover reveal. If you've got that geared up, this is one we discussed in a special panel, all to the subject of this one title, and also the fact that it's the introductory title for our new imprint called Consent. These are erotic titles, and this is the cover for Load the Dice.
All right. Yay, technology. There we go. All right. Now, in the discussions for this cover, there are, we want to walk this line that is a balance between giving an indication of the sophistication, sexiness, a little bit of the game of chance, the taking a chance kind of thing. And considering that this is the first really erotic novel on the Consent imprint, we want to be able to allude to the subject matter without going...
Without being real graphic about it, without going over.
Yeah, say what you want about 50 Shades of Grey, the story, but the cover art is a brilliant thing because it is sophisticated, it is immediately identifiable, it's a general subject matter, but in the context of that story is very specific.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we were looking at this, I was looking at elements of, okay, we have a man whose hands are behind his back. The way his hands are around his wrist can echo something such as the bondage themes kind of thing, handcuffs, without necessarily showing handcuffs. Taking it and then also being able to show the dice. Now, this was a challenge. Again, we did not have stock photography that would fit what we needed here, so we had to go outside of our scope and work with a photographer. And we found a young man. His name is Ethan Hellstrom, from Central Ohio, and he was willing. And this was an exercise in learning how to art direct a photo shoot over the internet through email. And so basically, he shot some pictures. And okay, well, let's do some, what do you think of this? And so throwing some very rough ideas together. Okay, this is the idea. The original concept was to be able to show some shoulders, and then the hands down below. And I said, okay, that's pretty good, but I would like something like this. So I sent him pictures back that said, I want to see his hands looking more like this, or maybe like this, where we can see the number, a lucky 7 roll in the hands. And so he sent back another session of pictures where we got this. Now, I need you to take a close look at this, because I did not direct this. This was brilliance that he came up with. Not only do we have, oh, come on now. There we go. Not only do we have the 2 and the 5 of a lucky 7, but we also are showing the snake eyes. So you have, in that one visual image, you have the best thing you can get and the worst thing you can get when you're rolling the dice. So this whole meta about games of chance that I can bore you, we can talk more about. Come over to my blog. We'll talk. But better the heck out of this.
And that's a great idea too. And also, we've got to say the feedback from the author on this was that is exactly the cover I was looking for. That is exactly the cover for this book.
Right.
It was very much what she had in mind going in. It was perfect for what she'd written, and it came together just seamlessly.
Right. Now, fortunately, Ethan was able to give me several things to work with. So when we looked at this, we said, those hands and that dice, those are perfect. We want those. But the model had worn a jacket that the buttons were not visible. And the jacket was a little bit big for him, so we couldn't see any white shirt underneath. And so it was it wasn't tracking as a suit. And so we had to go back in and say, okay, this is where we did a little bit of Photoshop magic. Taking from some other pictures, the original pictures that he had shot for us, I was able to add in buttons on the sleeves of the suit so that you could see that it was definitely a suit, which kind of elevates the class of the cover subject. And then also did a little Photoshop so that you can see we put some sleeves on him. Now, technically, if his hands were back like that, the sleeves might hike up a little bit, but that doesn't matter, because it now reads as he's wearing a business suit. We have this little pop of white, and it makes much better sense visually of what's happening in that picture.
Yep.
Now, then the next fun part is choosing type and kind of figuring out what position of things look best, and featuring the art, making that dice position central, is something that we definitely wanted to feature. So I chose to put the type in such a way that it would kind of frame that and make that the focal point. Again, when looking at the back cover, wanted to have something that would correspond with it. And Ethan had given me several shots from a session that had the dice with a person's hand in the background. But again, once we tried to work with type, we had to kind of flip and change things around a little bit. So through the magic of Photoshop, and because he was able to give me such a nice range of things to work with, it was a very easy thing to be able to switch things back and forth, do a little tweak here and there to get the exact cover we needed. Had we had the luxury of being in the same room, I could look at things, he could show me there, I could look at it just like America's Next Top Model and go, yep, that's it, no, we're turning a little bit this way, we got it. But this process could have been rife with error, and he really made it work so easy for me.
In America's Next Top Model, you would have had so much more drama.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I believed in you.
So, and for the person who had a question about do I have any artists that are arts background, Ethan is a photography student at, I believe, Ohio State. So he is doing this. He is going to be doing this as a profession.
So we had Jana's question about whether any of the authors come in with very specific ideas, or do you ever have to talk them into something? The next cover might be a good one to talk to about in that context, and it just so happens to be my book, because this one, it went through a few generations to get where it got.
Okay. Well, basically, when you're looking at doing a cover, you want to be able to find either something that kind of represents things as a whole, or perhaps you can find a scene that is kind of a key scene, a pivot point, something that causes people to remember, oh, that story, that when they first met in this scene, or when this thing changed, or things like that. If there's a good visual way to represent that, that's something that you can build on. So for me, in Girlie's original story, the scene where the columnist and the vineyard owner first meet was something that always stood out for me. And so I drew a couple of quick sketches to see if maybe Girlie would want to go for something like this.
Yeah. That's pretty much that's my level right there.
So, but upon second thought, there was some reconsideration. Maybe we didn't want to have an angry person on the cover, so no flinging bottles. Maybe keep some of the elements of the vineyard. That'd be a good idea. So as we talked more, we talked more about the scene where the columnist is first getting a chance to sample the this wine from Rhapsody Vineyards, and so we had talked to our artist. Her name is Elizabeth Vest, and she had drawn up some sketches with us that in the barrel room's not the right term.
Yeah, that's fine.
Barrel room? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So where the columnist is getting his first sample in this, and Girlie had talked about this idea that the sensory element of being able to have a glass of good wine in your hand, and you're holding it, and you put the glass up to your nose, and you're able to, that experience of being able to start to take in the scent of it, and the Girlie, I'm sorry, my terminology is failing me now.
Okay. Breathing in the nose. Yeah.
Yes. It's a very sensual kinds of thing, and I understand that, and I recognize that, but coming from a background myself of having been grown up as a teetotaling family, I was curious. Is this an image that would track with someone who maybe was a more what's the right term? Who wasn't a wine aficionado, who enjoyed wine but maybe wasn't a wine aficionado? Would they recognize this feeling, and would that convey the romance of the story? And so we had gone back and forth about a lot of this. Another thing that Elizabeth had come up with is this beautiful idea of, excuse me, sorry, flashes, this idea of the winding road down from the house in the vineyard with the his car and this lovely vista of the vineyard in the background.
And a couple things that I think I'd kind of requested is, if we were going for a tone and color and feel, I wanted to go for something that reflected the harvest season, was sort of autumnal in feel, and had that kind of lush, rustic feel to it.
Right. And so this was a good idea. This vista that was something that we really liked, but it wasn't quite right for the cover. Right. And so we thought more about, okay, what other different scenes might work? And there's a scene where they
make out in a wine cellar.
And we wanted to do something that was suggestive but not gaudy. And so, what about this? Oh, yes, and the other specification the girlie had for us is she says, I don't want just a glass of wine on a table and a bottle of wine on a table, because that's cliche. That's a wine ad. That's not my cover. And so, okay, let's find a way that we can incorporate these elements of wine without going cliche. And so our artist took a stab at that. And we said, okay, well, this maybe doesn't track vineyard as well. And so what if they were in the barrel room? And so we adapted a little from there, and then playing with some more ideas until we came to our final cover. Elizabeth is a watercolorist and had worked in these beautiful tones, and the watercolor technique that I think really brings this idea of romance, the sense of romance to the cover. And so I was really pleased with these rich tones and in the scene. So we're very happy with that.
And that shot, the one drawing that got rejected for the front cover involving the road, and that you can't see it on the advance reader copy, the International Scout truck ultimately ends up on the back cover.
Yes, I do a framework and say, okay, this is where we're going to put the type. And this was the artwork that the artist originally came back to me with, her original watercolor, and which is gorgeous. But again, working with type, we had to darken it a little bit so that the type could be seen out of it, and then also even the tones so that they coordinated with the front cover. And I think she did just a beautiful, beautiful bit of work.
Yeah, it really is. I know it was a long road to get to that point. It's just why we held Jana's question for right now. It went through a lot of generations and a bit of back and forth on that one. I had ideas. I had some ideas that failed. I had some ideas of clearly what I didn't want. So I was one of those people who had some set ideas of at least pieces or things that I did not want to see on it, and got them to work from there, and they ended up with this lovely watercolor, which I'm really, really pleased with. I'm going to throw a question in here real quick. Many of the covers have a black and white feel to them, yet Right Here Waiting and Sotto Voce are both so vivid. What makes the decision about more or less cover? This is from Teach Gleek.
Some of it, quite honestly, it's a balance of what feel do we want to achieve, and also what source art is available to us. For instance, our gorgeous Abs Man that's on the cover of Bleeding Heart, that art only came in black and white. And so we had to adapt that. Also, black and white or monotone or duotone kind of artwork can also take it out of a very realistic kind of setting and take it into a more imagination space, which I think can help give the viewer, the person who's picking up this book and deciding whether they want to read it, give them a little bit more wiggle room to imagine their own story in it. You're not as tied into things like skin tones and whatnot, so you're opening up a wider range of ethnicities. in some cases, and those kinds of elements all kind of swirl and play into how do we finally choose whether we want to go with something more monotone or if we go a full color cover.
I realized I'm missing one from my little stack of covers here. Speaking of one that's a full color cover, but we'll get to that. How about another stunner from Pencil Pushing Enthusiast?
All right. For The Bones of You. This was a situation where we were taking a story that was about two lovers who had been separated by time and by distance, very physical distance, one in New York, one in Cambridge, but the connection that was still between them that ended up bringing them back together. So we wanted to be able to represent this distance as well as the closeness. Hey, how's that for throw everything that you want to fit in this cover that doesn't necessarily fit? So the idea of representing the locations as well as somehow having a connection, like holding hands, taking each other's hands, things like that, were ideas that we had played with. And so I threw together a very rough cover art, this idea that the front cover would be one location, the back cover would be another, starting to play with the first idea that this would be our first wraparound cover that could go for it. And so I contacted CB and said, okay, we've got an idea, but we're not really sure what we want to do with this. This is we had these very broad ideas, but nothing really specific to give to her. So this first piece of art was the rough that I put together. We have Cambridge on this side, and we have New York on the back, and then these hands holding where the spine would be, and so we'd have hands on the front and the back, so they kind of tie the two places together. And so from that, she took that and ran with it, and gave us, first of all, this concept of the hands reaching toward each other, but still representing the two cities in kind of this very ethereal, dreamy space, which is gorgeous art, really gorgeous art. But we were a little concerned about how does that track as just a cover, a front cover. We don't want people to have to open up the entire book to be able to understand what's going on. And was the cityscape too detailed? Was it distracting too much? So I played around with it a little bit and said, well, what if we just did an outline? No, that wasn't quite right. And she came back with this idea that what if we represent the cities like this, and instead of having hands, play off this idea of the soulmate with the hearts, with the connecting thread. And we said, ooh, that is fantastic. The concept was sold. Now we just had to work on the details of how we represented the cities. So from there, we kind of looked at this art and said, well, it doesn't necessarily look like two separate places. It looks like the cover is a cathedral in New York, and that wasn't quite tracking like Cambridge. Although if you knew Cambridge, you could see very distinctly her skill in rendering the buildings there. And so we said, well, let's play around with that a little bit more. And we said, well, do we want to feature New York on the front versus Cambridge? Is that more visually? Is the Empire State Building something that's going to track visually quicker with a location? And we definitely like that, but it's still, this composition still made it look like it was all one city. So she altered it a little bit more and put things on a bit of an angle, and we knew we had our concept.
That's our cover. That's our wraparound.
This is our first wraparound cover. Now the challenge with doing a wraparound cover is that until you know the page count, you don't know how big the spine is going to be. Yeah. So in her art, CB had to build in.
And it's a big book.
It is an inch, almost an inch. Yeah. She had to build in some wiggle room for us that would still look good if the cover was a little bit smaller, but not end up losing details. It wouldn't end up pulling our Cambridge Cathedral over into New York if things were thicker. And so I sent her a detailed kind of mock-up of the cover and said, okay, this is how we track. So she knew how to build it to give us enough wiggle room so that when we had the final count, page count and could calculate the final spine width, we were able to come up with this. Now you'll see a lot of pink in my rough drafts. Those are things that we still need placeholders. So the final print version of this cover is still in process. But there you have it, our gorgeous landscape full cover, full wraparound cover.
Which also would look really good on someone's wall.
Which also looks amazing as...
Also, a funny side story on that one, because we always do a teaser before we announce the book, and Becky puts together these great, the teaser line that we talk about, the one story, one taste, one bite, one song, those things, can change everything. And so we use the teaser line with the cover art, but without the name of the book attached to it. And there was a lot of guesswork out there on what that cover was for. A lot of people thought it was the fandom classic Little Numbers, because they saw New York, but they didn't connect the Cambridge part. And the funny part about that, Stoney was telling me, was that people would write her when Little Numbers was in progress saying, "I love your story, Little Numbers," and she'd send notes to the real author of Little Numbers saying, "This is for you, and this is for you." People would get them confused, and now the artwork was getting confused too, which, it just sort of came full circle and was funny. But it's a beautiful book. I mean, it's a beautiful story, first of all, very well written story, and a beautiful cover to go with it. And elements of that cover are put into the interior design of the book as well, for the typeset of it.
Yes.
It looks fantastic.
Gorgeous story, gorgeous art. The most perfect marrying of two worlds.
Okay, I'm going to give you a quick question, and maybe you can pull up, because we are running a little short of time, the antithesis of the black and white covers that we were being asked about earlier. How about this one? I think this is a good one for us right now. Do you generally work on only one cover at a time, or do you work on multiple covers at a time?
Well, if you have seen the number of covers that we have done in the last 6 months.
Simultaneously.
Wow. Simultaneously, yes. We have covers going all the time in different stages of production. And so usually I'll be working on art for one cover, contacting an artist for another cover, doing some concepts, brainstorming for another cover, and frantically uploading final print art so that we can get the books out to reviewers and out to customers as soon as possible. And so it's a wonderful, busy, delicious swirl of everything at once.
Well, just a week or two ago, a couple of weeks ago, we had two or three cover meetings in just 1 week.
Yes.
For titles that are coming out in springtime, some very big titles that are coming out in springtime, and that we're wanting to make sure we take a lot of time and make sure we get them right.
Exactly. And plus you have to plan for time to print. You have to, we want it to be printed on this date, you have to back up and back up and back up to, and then all of a sudden everything kind of gets done at the same time. So it's exciting and wonderful, and oh my goodness. But something we love, so it's good.
How about our December, our first rom-com?
Yes.
Our first original from the ground up title.
Yes.
Our first really bright cover.
Oh, yes. Now, this was a cover for Don't Be Fancy's new original title,
Chef's Table.
Chef's Table. And this was something when you're working in a one genre, you need to be careful about there are certain things that are always the go-to things, such as your standard Harlequin romance, the stereotypical bodice ripper historical covers, things like that. There are things out there that you look at and you go, oh yeah, that's a romance novel.
Can I interrupt for a moment, because I stand corrected here. I'm going to blame lack of sleep deprivation, and I got it backwards. it was Hartwolf would get messages about where there's smoke, which Stoney wrote. And now Stoney's cover, of course, was getting plenty of guesswork on Tumblr that it was for Hartwolf's. So that's how it came full circle.
Oh, okay.
Close. It was the right people. One of the right titles.
So anyway, as we were approaching Chef's Table, you know, working in this romantic fiction genre, you know, wanting to have these elements of having sexy covers, having the protagonists, the men on the covers, you know, things like that. We could be in danger of showing the torso, this guy's torso every single time, which, you know, oh gosh, what a hard hard life it is. But you've got to find different ways of interpreting that to keep the covers fresh and to keep the title, you know, things tracking with what their story is. Now, Chef's Table, you know, we kind of say this is our first rom-com, and it has a spirit to it that's that, you know, the pacing to it, and there's humor in it, but it's still a very sophisticated kind of thing. But it to me, it really cried out for something. We need something colorful, and this was something that I went to the production team and said, do you trust me? I want to do something really different. Do you trust me? And they went, Becky, you do very lovely covers. We trust you. And I said, okay, I want to do something that's more cartoony. And they went, what? Are you sure you know what you're doing? I said, just let me try this. And so the concept for it came from Annie, and she said, wouldn't it be cool if we had this kind of playful concept of the chef in his chef's whites, and he's standing on the cover, and then you see this hand reaching around him and unbuttoning his buttons, you know, kind of this thing. So it's kind of something a little flirty, something sexy, and we said, oh yeah, we like that a lot.
And a knife.
And a knife, yes. Yeah, he would be holding some kind of an instrument of the trade, and we had tossed around some ideas. Well, what about a rolling pin? What about a whisk or something like that? And for those of you who know culinary things, a chef's knife or set of knives is something that chefs have their own sets. It doesn't belong to the restaurant. It belongs to the chef. It's something that, you know, you take care of your knife, it'll take care of you, you know, those kinds of things. And so, and within the story, the knife is referred to a lot. So we said, okay, we need to make sure that he's holding the knife. And so the next part of this was to be able to find a way to get the arm to come in such a way. Here's some sketches from our artist. Her name is Abby Hellstrom. Yes, if you recognize that name, she is the sister to our photographer, and she has recently graduated from the Columbus School of Art and Design and has fantastic illustration and animation skills. And so she worked with me on this cover. And so she did some different sketches that had different reaches, had our chef from the, reaching from behind, reaching around. Do we show can we crop it so that we would show both of their faces like this, which is very flirty and cuddly, and just loved all of that. And so, but the more we kind of worked with it, we felt like we just had to kind of strip it back, keep it simple. Both because it's a quick cover take, and secondly because of what we wanted to do with the technique, which is not only more a cartoon illustration, but what we did was to mimic cut paper art. And so if you look here at the details, these are paper textures that we've used for the different sections of his skin. His jacket has a different texture, his pants have a different texture, etc. And if you happen to be a design nerd like me, you recognize, the background is a paper texture that you can get, and such like that. And so there's a lot of my design nerd in this, and I'm very grateful that Interlude Press indulged me on this. Secondly, we had to look into how would the back cover play with this, and though the story is told mainly from the executive chef's point of view, the line cook, the diner cook that who comes into the picture is also very important. And so to echo what was happening on the front cover, we have our diner cook on the back, who happens to be very skilled in pastry making, and so we have him holding a piece of cheesecake and having the chef's hand coming over to swipe the cherry off the cheesecake. Again, echoing that flirty vibe, playful vibe that was going on in the front. And if you put them together, and I don't want you to do this with your book because you'll break the binding, but if you put these two together, look at those handsome bookends of our executive chef and our diner chef, our diner cook. So anyway, so yes, this was a tremendously fun cover to do, and I'm so glad I got to work with Abby on this. Her illustrative skills just really made it pop for us.
Yeah, it turned out really well. I got to admit, when you first said cartoon feel, I know that's one that I kind of shy away from and got a little nervous about, but as it came together, it really looked great.
Yes. All right.
Okay, I'm going to pop one more question. Let's see. Average turnaround time, we've kind of covered that. How many artists do we have in our talent pool? Well, I mean, there are others that we are working with or beginning to work with who you may not have seen their work yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an evolving number. Out of all the Interlude Press novels, was there one that was more difficult to design than the other? I think yes, probably two. But the one for Designs on You was tricky because it was all about striking a balance.
Mm-hmm.
There is a certain voyeuristic feel to part of the book, and yet you don't want to go too far with that. You don't, you don't want anyone to feel like this is a book about a stalker or something. I mean, we don't want that because ultimately it turns into a love story. So trying to strike that balance and convey what they do, it took some time to get to that point. And I think negotiating amongst ourselves to get it to that point as well. Once we got there, we were really happy with it, but it took quite a bit of time to get there.
Yeah, sometimes I think maybe knowing something from the fic can make it more challenging to try and reinterpret, or having a close relationship with something from the fic can make it harder to try and interpret it into a novel as well, because you have very distinct ideas in your head of, well, this is what we did before, and
it may not be what we're doing now.
Yeah, exactly.
It could change.
In the case of Designs on You, well, I had done a fanfic PDF for Axe, and so it was hard to kind of pull back from that and say, okay, well, what do we need to do to really revamp this and make it fit the re-envisioned story that it had become.
Okay, our first 2015 title and a new artist to our covers that we're just incredibly honored was able and willing to work her magic for us.
Yes. So when we were looking at doing a cover for Nitz's Nitty Writer's period story of a World War II period story of a young pilot and his beloved back on the home front, and again, start with the resources, what's out there available, and we said, okay, didn't take us any time at all. We need an illustrator. And because of some of these very specific things that are happening, we need somebody who is good at the details, who can evoke the era, and such. And so,
well, also because it's not just set in World War II, but the book very much has a feel of one of those 1940s wartime romances. I mean, the style in which it's written too, and we were hoping to get a cover that could sort of convey that vibe.
Yes. And so, you've seen a preview of this.
Yes.
Let me show you this gorgeousness that Tumblr user This Does Not Suck, also known as the lovely and talented Colleen, was able to come up with for us. This was a process, again, that we had talked about, and we said, okay, well, let's talk about what we want on the cover representing wartime, so it was natural to gravitate to our handsome pilot as the subject for the cover. And so we had talked about some different things. There's a rough sketch of what was going on, what we had been thinking about that she had sent, so we were getting spacing things worked out and whatnot. We had originally talked about the idea that we would see him walking away from us on the tarmac, maybe see his face kind of turned over his shoulder so we could catch a glimpse of nice strong jaw, you know, very good. World War II bomber jackets had incredible art on the often would have incredible art on the back of it that would tie in with the bomber crews, specific bomber crew. And then she came up with this idea of a closer view of our pilot. And even in this rough sketch, you can see the kind of emotion she is putting in his face, in his stance. And we just said, oh my God, this is it. This is it. So run with it. We were blessed to have Colleen because she is, she said in several emails back and forth, she's a Virgo, so therefore she is very detail-oriented. And she meticulously went in and researched costumes isn't quite the right word, but what kind of uniform dress? What does this helmet look like? We had thought that when our initial idea to have the fancy artwork on the back of his jacket wasn't gonna be because we wanted the stance. Well, maybe we'll put it on the sleeve. And she came back and said, you know what? They wouldn't have put a squad thing on it. That would be for the unit. And so we went back and researched and tweaked things again. And so her attention to detail, down to take a look at the details in this envelope, the addresses that she put in, and the way that it's addressed in order to get, how would it be addressed in order to get a piece of mail to a soldier serving overseas? Date correct. All this kind of such, those kinds of things that if you don't know it, it may not track with you, but if you do know this stuff, that'll be the first thing that's going to pull you out of this story if these kind of details aren't correct. And she was a tremendous benefit to us in being able to research and really do the legwork that made this cover as incredible as it was. For the back cover, I got an email from her one day and she said, one thing that we wanted to do was take different elements of the story and spread them kind of on the desk, things that would represent different things that our lovers were sending back and forth to each other through the mail while they were separated. And so we had listed out some specific things that were drawn upon in the story. And she sent me an email that says, I was just playing with this, and here's some ideas. The idea of having some photographs that they would send back and forth, some letters. There was a teacup, a china teacup that the pilot had sent back to his beloved in New York from England, and the gentleman in New York, he was a tailor, so maybe some spools of threads, things like that. And she put together this gorgeous artwork because she was just sketching, and she is amazing, and this is gorgeous. So anyway, and I was stunned, but then again, this is a case of we need to be able to put type over this, and I don't want to cover any of this exquisite art. So I sent her a sample of, all right, this is the kind of space. Over here in the green, you can do anything you want. The yellow is kind of places that the text would wrap back and forth, so I could wrap it around what other elements would spill into that area. But the stuff that's in the pink, I need to put text over top of it, so it needs to be either shadow or very low detail. So she came back with something rough like this, and we tried it out to size, and got some sample text in there. No, that's not Spanish. That's called it's a fake Latin term, just so typographers can put things in and see how much text would fit in a space. And so, yep, that's it. That works. And then, let's see. This is the rough that she sent back to us, or the next stage that she sent back to us. Again, being able to highlight some of this incredible detail, attention to detail, that she did. There we go. There's a point where there's telegrams sent back and forth that give details about what's happening to the soldier overseas. Again, this teacup and the details, being able to see the tea and it's in, the spoon that's in it, and the layers there. Our bomber pilot by his airplane, the bundle of letters, because they corresponded a lot, and this handsome devil. We had asked Nitz, my goodness, we had asked Nitz who was she kind of envisioning when she was reimagining these characters, and she said Gregory Peck was a big resource, or big inspiration for our pilot, and had so if you look at a picture of Gregory Peck, you can see those elements in there without looking like Gregory Peck. He's a beautiful original man, and just completely blew us away. And we couldn't have been happier. Oh, and the letter, we pulled out a letter that was actually in the text, and she hand wrote it out and put it there. Oops. So anyway, for the artwork alone, you should get this book. And
it's gorgeous.
Bonus, amazing story. So either way you want to look at it. Fantastic story, bonus, amazing art.
I still keep looking at the artwork, and I found myself just staring at it the first night you sent it over. Yeah. And I think we all did. It's so beautiful. It's so evocative. It fits the story and the style of the story so well. Mm-hmm. And yes, the handsome pilot is handsome. Yeah. Nice.
Art that you look at and you are transported there. That is a hallmark of a good artwork for a period story.
Absolutely. Gorgeous stuff, and a lot more in process that we're really excited about. We can't talk about it just yet, but hopefully we'll do another one of these maybe 6 months from now. Who knows? We have more covers to talk about, because I know we've got some exciting design concepts that are out there right now, and that are wrapping themselves around some very exciting books too. And our time is running very short, so I think the best thing to do at this point is for Becky to tell us who wins their choice of one of these lovely, lovely mini posters that she has created. We will send it to you. The drawing has occurred. See, you can have the handsome pilot if I'm willing to give him up. So, Becky, who wins?
We would like to congratulate Twitter user Mixed Berry Jam. You get your choice of cover art for your Interlude launch party prize.
We'll find you. That sounds terrible. No, Rafflecopter helps us track you down. That's why they ask for that information, so that we can send you your prize, or at least get in touch with you to find out where to send it. So anyway, that is it. That's an update on all those covers. We have kind of kept under wraps for a little while in order to release them all at the same time. We're really proud of the cover art here and the artists that have been collaborating. A lot of this is collaborative work, because when you go and look at other books in the genre, a lot of them aren't up to this standard. A lot of them aren't up to this standard. I'm not saying all of them aren't, but we've got stunning covers that I think are really reflective of what's inside, because we want good books that are well written and covers that respect that. And I think that we really have a set of covers that do that extraordinarily well, and that's to Becky's credit. So on that note, Becky, thank you so much. They're gorgeous. I'm excited about what's coming after this as well. That there's some exciting things. So stay tuned. And in holy cow, about half an hour is our final. I have not yet passed out from sleep deprivation panel. I may just have to open a bottle of bubbles. It will be the three partners of Interlude to tell you a little bit about what's next, and a few other plans we have to continue this celebration and sort of string it out for a while with some very cool stuff. So stay tuned. We will be back in about 30 minutes. Becky, thank you so very much.
Thank you for sticking with us, everyone.
And thank you for tolerating me all day long. I appreciate it. We'll see you soon.